Greetings and welcome back to the Corporate Governance and Ethics learning session. We continue in our today's lesson with the study of board governance models. Today, our focus is on the Patron Governance Model. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the characteristics, the benefits, and limitations of the Patron Governance Model. First of all, we are going to describe the Patron Governance Model. Patron Governance Model. Patron The Patron Governance Model is a form of corporate governance in which a single individual or a group holds dominant or controlling interest in a company. In this model, the patron or the controlling shareholder plays a significant role in the company's decision making and operations, and such an individual or a group of individuals may have significant influence over the board of directors. So the patron governance model is commonly found in family ownership businesses, where a single family or individuals holds a majority stake in the company. And in some cases, the patron may be the founder of the company or a senior family member who has taken on leadership role of the company. And in other cases, the patron may be an outsider investor who has acquired a controlling stake in a company. So the patron governance model is a form of governance where a single entity or an individual known as the patron has significant influence or control over the organization. That's the meaning of patron governance model. So what are the characteristics of such a governance model? Characteristics. The first obvious characteristic is centralized authority. Centralized authority. The patron holds centralized authority over the decision-making process within the organization, and they often have the final say in major decisions. That's the first characteristic. The second characteristic is in relation to the patron's vision. Patron's vision. Patron's vision. The organization's goals and direction are typically aligned with the patron's vision and the patron's interests, and their personal preferences and objectives heavily influence strategic decisions of the company. Direct patron involvement, number 3. Direct patron involvement. The patron is directly involved in the organization's operations and may have a hands-on approach to management. So they may provide guidance or make key decisions. They may also often offer resources when needed by the company. Direct patron involvement. That is the third characteristic. Number 4, resource dependency. That means resource dependency means the organization depends heavily on the patron for resources. the organization relies heavily on the patron for resources, including funding, expertise, networks, and other forms of support. And as a result, the organization may be vulnerable to changes in the patron's priorities or even circumstances. For example, if a patron becomes bankrupt, then that may affect an organization's operations, resource dependency. Limited autonomy, number 5. Limited autonomy is yet another feature. Now, while organizations may have some degree of autonomy in day-to-day operations, its overall direction and major decisions are often subject to the patron's approval or influence. Limited autonomy. 6, patronage networks. Patronage networks. The patron often surrounds themselves with a network of loyal supporters or the advisors who help implement their vision and also will help the patron to maintain control over the organization. We can cite long-term stability as a feature. Long-term stability. The patron governance model can provide stability to the organization, particularly if the patron is committed to its success. If the patron is committed to the success of the organization, then there could be long-term stability. These are 7 characteristics. Let us put down the benefits of patron governance model. What are the benefits? Now, the benefits can be drawn from the characteristics, the first one being stability and support. Stability and support. How is stability and support a benefit? Now, the patron provides stability and support to the organization, offering financial resources, expertise, networks, and other forms of assistance that can help the organization to thrive. 2, clear direction. Clear direction. Now, with patron's vision guiding the organization, there is often a clear direction and focus on specific goals and specific objectives. Number 3, efficient decision making. Efficient decision making. Now, decision making can be streamlined as the patron has the authority to make key decisions without the need to deliberate or even the need for consensus building processes. So decisions can be made efficiently without the need to having many meetings, many consensus building meetings, and so on. Access to resources or access to resources. Access to resources. Access to resources. Now, organizations under this model often have access to resources that might be otherwise difficult to obtain, such as funding, influential contacts, specialized knowledge, and so on. Then lastly, flexibility. Flexibility. The patron can adapt quickly to changing circumstances or opportunities, allowing organizations to respond rapidly to new challenges or even market conditions. So these are 5 benefits. 1, stability and support. 2, clear direction. 3, efficient decision making. 4, access to resources. 5, flexibility. Then Limitations. Just like any other board governance model, the patron governance model has limitations. Has also limitations. The first one is dependency and vulnerability. One, dependency and vulnerability. Dependence and vulnerability. Organizations under a patron can become overly dependent on the patron, and that is dependent for resources and support, which makes them vulnerable and dependent to the patron's whims and changes in circumstances. Dependency and vulnerability. There is also limited autonomy. Patron governance model has limited autonomy, as decisions are often subject to the patron's approval or influence, and that can stifle innovation, it can stifle creativity within the organization. There is yet another limitation which is related to the capture of the organization by the patron, risk of patron capture. Risk of patron capture. There is a risk that the patron may use the influence for personal gain or even to advance their own agenda rather than acting in the best interest of the organization. 4, lack of accountability. Lack of accountability. Now, since the patron holds significant power, there may be limited mechanisms for accountability within the organization, and decision-making processes may lack transparency, and there may be few checks and balances in place. Lack of accountability. There is 5, potential for conflict of interest. There is potential for conflict of interest. Now, the patron's personal interests or connections may conflict with the organization's missions or values, leading to ethical dilemmas or compromising decision making. 6, challenges with succession. Challenges with succession. Now, long-term sustainability of organizations can be jeopardized if it is heavily reliant on the patron's personal involvement and resources, especially if there is no clear succession plan in place. These are 6 limitations. 1, dependency and vulnerability. 2, limited autonomy. 3, risk of patron capture. 4, lack of accountability. 5, potential for conflict of interest. Then lastly, we have challenges with succession. Benefits: 1, stability and support. 2, clear direction. 3, efficient decision making. 4, access to resources. And lastly, flexibility. Earlier on, we had identified 7 characteristics of patron governance model. 1, centralized authority. Number 2, patron's vision. 3, direct patron involvement. 4, resource dependency. 5, limited autonomy. 6, we have patronage networks. Then lastly, long-term stability. Now, before we close the lesson, I'll read out to you today's assignment. 1, what is the main purpose of patron governance model in the context of organizations? 2, how do patrons influence the strategic direction of an organization without being involved in day-to-day operations? 3, what are the potential challenges associated with the patron governance model, particularly in the terms of power dynamics and accountability? 4, How can an organization ensure that patrons remain engaged and committed to its mission over time? Thank you for attending the lesson. In our next session, we are going to study the characteristics, the benefits, and the limitations of the cooperative model. Bye.